welcome back. In this video today, we're going to tell you about 9 things that we learned in doing kitchen renovations and upgrades in our 1950s duplex bungalow.
So first, let's tell you a little bit about this 1950s bungalow we bought.
We love this house because the upstairs was basically ready to move in. We planned to live there as we renovated it. And the basement was bare bones.
So back in 2018, we bought this house when it felt pretty scary. House prices had gone up quite a bit. Like, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? We did it anyway. We spent about 2.5 years converting the basement into a legal duplex. So this house we bought had an old kitchen that hadn't been renovated in since the beginning.
70 years.
70 years, yeah. And we also knew we needed to put a kitchen in the basement as well. So you hear us talk a little bit about the original kitchen upstairs as well as the new kitchen that we put in downstairs. We didn't build or renovate them at the exact same time. We've done both now at this point at this house.
Over the last 5 years. So when we first moved into the house, we had to do a little bit of work in the upstairs kitchen just to clean it up. It was grimy. There were like decades worth of grime in the hardware, like all the pulls and knobs on the cupboard doors, and they were kind of sticky and gross. So Jono worked his butt off sanding down all of the cupboards, like the actual boxes themselves and the cupboard doors. We took them all off, sanded them down, then painted them, and then reinstalled them with cleaned hardware. So that's what leads us to our first takeaway, and that is that we learned solid wood, as wood as it gets, kind of cupboards are superior.
Yes, that would be our take. They're durable, they can last for decades and decades and decades. If they chip, you can just repaint it or refinish it.
But what we've learned in more recent kitchen renovations is that you actually even want unpainted wood. So if you can get cupboards that are just wood with a stain, that's even better.
So when the budget allows in our kitchens, we prefer to use a hardwood rather than like a plywood or a laminate or something that can chip easily.
Okay, so the upstairs kitchen at Project Linden, the original 1950s 7-year-old kitchen. The other problem with it was the layout. So there was a bank of cupboards that had like the sink, the fridge, and the majority of lower cabinets. And then there was a standalone stove over in the corner. And unfortunately, because the kitchen was pretty small, the stove bumped almost like right up against the bank of cupboard. There was like a 1.5 feet between the two, like the stove and then the cupboards. And so first of all, one, it sucked because as you're cooking, there was nowhere to like put your spoon or your pot to the side of the stove. And then 2, if you wanted to access those cupboards that were kind of beside the stove, you had to like really shimmy down in there and like turn your body to try to get in, and it made those cupboards really inaccessible.
You had to be like a ninja to use them.
Yeah. So basically you had to put like things that you would never use in those cupboards, making them basically useless.
So after 70 years, we thanked the kitchen for its service and decided, okay, we're gonna update this. And we put in, as we mentioned earlier, hardwood cabinets. So even if this space is small, you can pack a lot of punch with a great layout.
Mm-hmm. And that kitchen now is so much better. We rearranged it so that the counter space turns around. There's like an L in the counter space now. You have workspace beside your cooktop, and all of the cupboards are useful. Countertop material selection matters. So we have 2 kitchens to talk about here. I'm going to talk about the upstairs one, and John's going to talk about the downstairs one. In the upstairs kitchen, when we were doing the renovation, we had a choice. We could pick between sort of your lower end budget option, which is like a laminate countertop, or we could go super high end with like a granite or quartz. So what we decided to do upstairs in that kitchen was actually go high end. We chose to do a quartz countertop. We weren't gonna do quartz because we thought, we don't need to have this be like a gourmet kitchen. And a lot of laminate products these days look really good. You can get them to kind of look like stone. They're very durable, they last a long time. So laminate is a great product. We decided not to do laminate in this upstairs counter because there was an L in the counter. And by doing that, we were gonna have to add a seam. So they can't cut laminate pieces to like be L-shaped. It ends up being two different pieces that you then notch together. And so down the corner of that cupboard, there was gonna be a big long seam. Now, seams are not a problem, but in our kitchen, because it was a small layout, the seam was actually gonna be really close to the sink. And with the sink, then you have to start thinking about water exposure, water damage, and the company that we were working with explicitly suggested, don't do laminate, you're just gonna be disappointed and end up having to replace it in like the next 5 years because it's gonna bubble and crack. So we said, okay, you know what? We want this to last for another 70 years, so we'll do quartz. And since it was a really small space, we knew it wasn't gonna cost like a crazy amount.
Yeah. Okay, so in the basement, I think we made a pretty big mistake.
Big mistake.
We went with a butcher block countertop, which is the hardest countertop to maintain. Even though they're not expensive, you have to really be on them in terms of maintenance, and I wouldn't recommend it for a rental. The positives to the butcher block is it's cheap and you can install it yourself. So we just plopped it into place, used our saw to cut a hole for the sink, and then it was like done, good to go. What happened quickly is that countertop started to warp and get like little raised sections as the wood had water sit on it, which is just gonna happen with any countertop. You're gonna have water sitting on it. And unless you're oiling it very regularly, you're gonna probably
water
have
damage.
water damage. So it's still there. It's still functional, but it's not gonna last nearly as long as the quartz countertop we put in upstairs. Avoid butcher block countertops unless it's in a place where you're planning to live for a long period of time and you can keep an eye on it, you can keep it oiled and maintain it properly. You're gonna kick us off with lights?
Yeah, lights. Lights are the easiest way to make a big difference in a space, especially if you're dealing with like basement apartments. If you don't have proper lights, it can really quickly feel like dingy, dark. So our approach with lighting, as you might have heard us allude to before, is that Jonna loves pot lights.
Yeah, I love pot lights. They're easy to install. They're dimmable, right? When it comes to pot lights, I also have a preference with color. You can get different color lights, right? And that's with any type of light or light bulb. We like to go with the 4000 Kelvin light color, which is not like a blue, it's not like a yellow, it's in the middle.
Nice and in between, nice and bright.
Yeah, nice and bright.
Nice mixture of like brightness and warmth.
I also like pot lights just because they're so quick to install. You just get like a hole saw, put holes in the ceiling.
The other nice thing about pot lights, especially in basements, is that they're flush with the ceiling. So they don't protrude off the ceiling at all, which would kind of give the sense of a lower ceiling height. So they make sure that it feels like you're maximizing for space.
Yeah.
If you have the space and if you have the luxury of like planning out lighting, it's really nice to also think about different types of lights. So pot lights are great for just like general lighting, but you also want to think about maybe if you could add like sconce lighting, which is when it's right up on the wall, maybe on the other side of like a mirror or a bed. It's nice to have just lamps to create like a warmer light in the room so that that's your outlet. So you need to have enough outlets to plug in lamps. And task lighting too.
Yeah.
Under cabinets or above your kitchen sink, it's really nice to be able to see what you're doing in functional areas like a kitchen. So the takeaway with lighting, pot lights are great, keep it simple, and if you want to make a space feel a bit more upscale, add some variety to your lighting.
Okay, backsplashes. So backsplashes are something that you can do yourself. They're an easy way to take your kitchen up a notch without breaking the bank. The material for doing a backsplash is not very expensive. And there's a lot of DIY tools out there. So what we did is we got a mesh little, I don't know, like a foot by like a foot square little mesh things.
Grid of tiles,
yeah.
like multiple tiles already in their little formation.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to be sticking, because otherwise you have to like put on one piece and then put all these little spacers beside each tile, put another on all the little spacers.
Yeah.
This gave us like 20 tiles at once, and then we just had to space on the edges.
Yeah. The mistake we made is we used glass tile because we thought it would look cool. It does look cool. It's really hard to work with. Ceramic tile is much, much easier to cut and shape around your outlets, around your like edges. I would definitely recommend a ceramic tile. And most backsplashes are ceramic. We're a little bit unusual in that we went with glass. Use ceramic and the little mesh things. Okay, dishwashers. This is sort of a big thing that we talk about regularly, whether or not to install a dishwasher. They cost like what, $500 to $800. But the question is, are you gonna get your return on your investment installing a dishwasher? How much more can you raise rent by having a dishwasher? And then what's the payback on installing the dishwasher?
And what are the risks of having another appliance that potentially can break? Or we've heard horror stories of people, sending nuts and food down into the dishwasher and having it create clogs.
Yeah, it's just another thing that your tenants might call you to have you fix. And having a technician come out to repair it is gonna be several $100s probably.
On the flip side, we have learned that having a dishwasher or not having a dishwasher can be a deal breaker for some tenants. So depending on your target market, you want to think about what their dishwasher requirements are.
What we've sort of landed on as a general rule of thumb is if we're going to redo a kitchen or add a new kitchen, we will add a dishwasher if it's going to be a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom space. We probably won't add a dishwasher if it's just a 1-bedroom. We're going to talk about cost, which I think is a big part of decision making when it comes to kitchens. We're going to first talk about our upstairs kitchen, which we just finished maybe 6 months ago or so, and the different costs we had there. So the biggest cost was the custom wood cabinets, which were $9,000 to do the bottom and the top part of the cabinets. So not cheap, it was definitely the most expensive part of the project, but it's also like what makes a kitchen. We also had new flooring installed, so we put new sheet laminate flooring. So it's like one big piece. And we like this because it's very durable, it's gonna last decades, it's easy to clean. And the cost for putting this new flooring in was just under $2,000 for the labor and materials. And they did it in like 4 hours, so it didn't take very long.
All right, the countertop, which we mentioned earlier for this kitchen, which was quartz, cost $2,000. We spent about $50 on new pot lights. Labor was free. We spent about $125 on a fan to go above the stove and about $750 on a dishwasher to put beside the sink. Again, labor was free there.
But I didn't do everything. We spent $150 on electrical supplies, wiring and boxes, but then we had an electrician come in for an hour to do the final connection to the panel. So the total cost to do the new kitchen upstairs was $12,200. Pretty good, I think.
Pretty good. Adding the dishwasher, new lighting, new floor, new countertop, new cupboards.
Yeah.
Okay, now for the basement. And the basement is a little bit harder to price out because a lot of the components like the floor, lighting, they were shared with the rest of the unit because it was so open concept. So this number is going to be a little bit less clear cut.
We're also using numbers from 2018, 2019?
For the basement.
Yeah, so add a little bit to these numbers to get a more accurate picture of current numbers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as far as like countertop and cupboards go, that costs just under $2,000. I think it was $1,900.
We used IKEA. We did it ourselves. It took a day or two to put together.
Had we gone with the custom route down there, we probably would have spent more like $4,000, about double what we spent. Okay, the countertop for the basement, which was the butcher block, was $300.
The 24-inch stove that we added, which is a smaller stove, was $750. The sink was $162. The faucets were $100. And the fridge was $750. The hood vent that we installed above the range on the stove was $360. The shelving that we put up was cheap because we used wood that we had around the house here. So the brackets were like $22. And then the backsplash materials were $482.
Okay, so for the basement, the total cost for everything that you could like see, like the finishing work, the cupboards, the countertop, the shelves, the appliances, all of that was $4,900.
That doesn't sound like very much. we were on a budget, I guess.
Now, what it doesn't include is all of the behind the walls, under the floor, like everything else.
So I think like if you're curious, what does it cost to put in a like a new kitchen in a space where there is nothing in a basement? I would say if you're gonna do it yourself with materials, you're probably looking at $10,000 in materials. No labor costs, you're not hiring anybody, just materials.
Yeah.
Okay, so one big question is when do you outsource the work versus do it yourself?
With our work at Project Linden, we took 2.5 years to do this thing. We wanted to do it ourselves, we wanted to learn. We were okay with taking time, but effectively we missed out on over 2 years of rental income by taking a long time to do it. So that's something that you really have to consider when you're thinking about outsourcing to the pros. If you outsource, yes, there are more costs, but there's also a sooner path to revenue.
And not to judge your ability here, they'll probably do a better job.
They'll probably do a better job. But again, it comes down to budget. And for us, we didn't have a lot of extra cash at the time of the project. So we were taking our time, doing it over a couple of years. But if you have a bit of extra capital up front, it probably just makes sense to pay for someone else to do it. And we're not talking about having a general contractor here necessarily, but you can still manage the project yourself and make a lot of the key decisions, but anyone can be contracted out to do each individual task. So we've categorized the things that we tend to like to do on our own versus outsource based on low, medium, and higher level skilled projects.
So on the easier side of things that most anybody can do, I would put putting a backsplash on your kitchen. We would also say installing an IKEA kitchen, you can do yourself. Putting the IKEA pieces together,
Yeah.
plopping it against the wall, definitely designed to be a DIY friendly.
Absolutely. On the medium side of things, we would include countertop installation. You'd think it'd be pretty simple, but sometimes depending on the cuts you need and the type of material that you're working with, this could actually get a little bit tricky. The other medium skill level task would be lighting. As you know, we are big fans of pot lights, and it's been a relatively simple thing for us to do, but you have to be a bit comfortable around electrical wiring and getting up into the attic and that kind of thing.
Okay, and on the higher skill side of things, we'd probably put running new water lines to your kitchen, including the plumbing, the drainage, the venting, all of those things are a little bit more challenging. You don't want to get them wrong. You can absolutely learn these skills, but they are a little bit more challenging. We would also put installing an exhaust fan into this category, particularly if you are going to be exhausting it out of a wall. You're going to probably want a professional to come in to cut that hole.
In the foundation or the wall.
Yeah. If you're going through the roof, again, makes me a little bit nervous. You can absolutely do it. Still a little bit challenging.
So the takeaway is you can do any or all of these things, but you got to know your budget, your timeline, and your comfort level. There's 9 things that we've learned about building and renovating our kitchens at Project Linden. We hope it's been helpful.
We're not kitchen experts. We want to continue learning as well. So if you have questions or comments, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to talk about your kitchen ideas, kitchen woes, kitchen plans, anything we can do to learn together.